The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Mason Beckman and Tristan Warner. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Pennsylvania wrestling fans, you are now dialed into the PA Power College Podcast. As Jason Bryant of the Matt Talk Podcast Network said, I'm Tristan Warner, joined by my main man, as always, Mason Beckman, a.k.a. Beck Diggity. Sniffly Mason, how you doing over there in Pittsburgh?
I'm good. Still recovering from being sick all week, but hey, we're gonna make it happen. I've competed under conditions like this, so I figure podcasting under it should be no problem, right?
Yeah, I guess the difference would be whenever you wrestle, we just have to watch you, but now for our fans listening, they actually have to listen to you sniffle through this hour-long podcast. So to our fans, we apologize for Mason's under-the-weatherness, if you will. We're going to try to make the most of this despite. Mason, we got some good topics lined up. It feels like we've been a minute since we've done this. I guess we'll start off at the recruiting news. There's a decent amount of guys who have made their commitments here in the last few weeks that we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah, there's been a lot of recruiting activity and a lot of coaching changing activity in the last few weeks. The recruiting activity is not surprising. This tends to be the time of year that happens, or one of the times a year that happens in bulk. So Jarrett Lane and Brian Meyer both committed to Lehigh. Jarrett Lane, a state champ out of Southern Columbia High School, joining his older brother Kent at Lehigh. Brian Meyer from Phillipsburg, New Jersey. For those of you not familiar with the Lehigh Valley area, Phillipsburg and Easton are actually essentially the same place, just separated by the state line. So if you go across the bridge, on one side of the river is Easton. On the Pennsylvania side, it's Easton. On the New Jersey side, it's Phillipsburg. So that's a local guy. I'm sure he probably only lives about 30, 35 minutes from Lehigh campus, depending on what part of Peaburg he lives in. So Meyer's a New Jersey third placer through the middleweights. That's a pick. Those are two good pickups for Lehigh. Lewis Newell, a couple-time state runner-up out of Seneca Valley. Cole Matthews, a three-time place winner, two-time state finalist for Reynolds, and Luke Kemmer, a state medalist for Hempfield, are all headed to Pitt. It seems like Pitt has just been going nuts with the commitments they've got from recruits, so they're killing it. That new coaching staff seems to be working wonders already. Isaac Reed, a state runner-up from Kiski area at heavyweight, is headed to Lock Haven. He's going to be a bald eagle out there for Scott Moore. And the biggest name on this list, and that's saying something because there's some really big names on this list, but Anthony Artolona, the number one ranked kid in the country at, I believe, either 138 or 145. I know he's the one that beat Sammy Sasso in the Fargo semifinals. Artolona is headed to Penn. So Roger Reyna, we've both heard about how well Coach Reyna can recruit. That's already on display. So all in all, some really high-level recruits to, 4 different Pennsylvania programs. So that's just good stuff all around right there.
Yeah, it is, Mason. Out of all the guys on this list, one that stands out to me, maybe one of the top guys on this list, but also one that I feel like you might have some insight into maybe his decision. Cole Matthews out of Reynolds, your high school. And he's got older brother Austin, who did spent some time at Clarion and then ended up transferring over to Edinburgh, and now he's got one more year left there. And I think they have an older brother, Adam, who might have wrestled at NC State. Do you have any idea what Cole's thought process was going to Pitt, kind of being, taking his own route other than his older brothers?
I talked to him through the process, because the Matthews family, Adam, the oldest one, is actually the same age as me, and we wrestled together for our entire careers. Austin's 2 years behind me, and then Cole is, 7, 8 years, a lot behind me. Maybe not. I don't know the exact number, but and I don't feel like doing the math right now, to be honest. So, but it's that family's one that they grew up 300 yards down the street from me. We spent a lot of time together. I know that Edinboro was one of the schools that Cole looked at really closely, but I think Pitt just felt like the right place for him. I know that he got along really well with the new coaching staff and everything, but him and Luke Kemmer did an interview with Jeff and Eric for their podcast. So, I'm sure Cole, I haven't, as of us recording this, that episode hasn't been released. So I'm sure that interview will have a ton of insight as to, how their decisions were made and why he went to Pitt over following in Austin's steps. I can't talk right now. Following in his brother's footsteps and going to Edinboro. But yeah, and I don't want to sit here and speculate and then steal Jeff and Eric's thunder one way or the other. So, I'm definitely excited for Cole. I think that Pitt's a great fit for him. We'll see how he adjusts to city life coming from old transfer Pennsylvania, but it'll be good. And then just this entire list of kids. And, one of the things that I've noticed with Pitt already with this new staff, and not that they ever didn't keep Whippio kids home, but they're getting commitments all over the board. And, Lewis Newell, Seneca Valley kid, Pittsburgh area. Cole Matthews, Reynolds kid, about an hour and 15 minutes north. Luke Kemmer is a Hempfield kid, probably a half hour away from Pittsburgh, if that. They're really doing a great job of keeping these Western Pennsylvania kids in Western Pennsylvania. And we've heard it all the time. If for a school like Pitt, if they keep the local kids home, you're going to have a roster that's going to be extremely hard to beat.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely an exciting time for Pitt. Like you said, Pitt always pulls a lot of kids from the Whippio, but then again, you also have some of their top guys going elsewhere. Like off the top of my head, UVA pulls a lot of kids from Pitt. Obviously, you got Penn State. You got guys like Michael Kemmerer and Spencer Lee going out to Iowa. So it's always good when you can see these top level studs from the Pittsburgh area stay at home and attend Pitt. So it's an exciting time with the new coaching staff, and they're definitely picking up some good recruits. Looking on from there, there's also been some coaching changes here, Mason, that we noted. One that jumped out to me, Dylan Alton going to Ryder. I'm not sure where Dylan's been the last few years. I know he was at Army for a little bit?
Yeah, he was at West Point. Did you see that ridiculous video with him and Kevin Ward before the Penn State-Oklahoma State dual meet last year?
No, never saw that.
Because it's not a very long one. I know the NWCA does the best of brand, like their best social media stuff every year. That video there, it's hysterical. It's worth taking the time to go and watch it. They do this whole spoof about, because Ward's an Oklahoma State guy, their head coach, and Dylan obviously was a Penn State guy. But yeah, if you haven't seen that, go give that a watch. But like you said, Dylan's headed to Ryder. Be interesting to see what he can do with Chad Walsh. They're very different styles, but I think that Dylan's the type of guy that would give Walsh problems because he's so solid.
Different styles, but I can also see little flashes of similarities too. Dylan Alton, both Altons really, especially in high school. I don't know if they did it as much in college, but in high school they always had that move where they'd go for a cement job, and then when the guy would resist it, they would kind of like back trip, chin whip, and I feel like that has the Walshes written all over it.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very, very true. So that'll be an interesting pairing as far as coach-athlete goes. Other coaching changes. Mike McMullen leaves his home city of Philadelphia and the Penn program to head back to his alma mater at Northwestern. So, he leaves his childhood home in eastern Pennsylvania. Mike is a Lehigh Valley native. He's from Easton, so he grew up not far north of Philadelphia. Headed back to his college home up there in Evanston, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. So I'm sure he's excited to be back working with his alma mater. Filling his spot out at Penn, at least for the time being, is Dan Valamont, a couple-time All-American, a national runner-up for Penn State. He was named the interim Penn assistant coach. Whether or not he moves into full-time or permanent status, I should say, in the coming months or after the season. That's anybody's guess. Mac McGuire, who was a state champ for Upper St. Clair, multiple-time national qualifier for Kent State, has been named the grad assistant at Cleveland State. So he's back with one of his old college coaches, Josh Moore, who's an assistant coach at Cleveland State. So I'm sure Mac and Josh are, glad to be back working together, while Mac gets his graduate degree and, can help the Vikings out there try to do some good things.
Yep. And it's funny, like you were talking about Roger Reyna earlier, it's funny when we see some of the guests we've brought in on former podcasts keep popping up again in our later episodes. You were just talking about Reyna, how he was able to pull Artelona as a recruit. And it's a shame to see McMullen go back to Northwestern. I know when we interviewed Roger Reyna, he was really hype on the fact that McMullen was one of their assistant coaches doing big things with the heavyweights. So sad to see him go. And also Chance Marsteller, one of the most recent guests we've had on our podcast. Some breaking news that has come out in the last few weeks, looks like he'll be eligible to wrestle at Lock Haven right away this season. There was a lot of speculation whether or not he would be able to come back and wrestle at all in college, and then it looked like he'll be eligible in January, and now the latest is it looks like he'll be able to wrestle right from the get-go.
Yeah, which is huge news for Chance himself, for the Lock Haven program, for everything. And, it's just huge wrestling news. Chance is a guy that has proven to compete at a very high level. He'll be able to be at the weight where he feels best. So, excited to see what Chance, no pun intended, but with this second chance, what he can do. And I'm sure that he's got a lot. I know in his mind he's got a lot to prove. So it's going to be exciting to see what he does, with this one last run. A couple of the news and notes. One thing I saw that I thought was really cool, there's always the big college football games every weekend, and, at different points and downtime during those games, you'll see one of not the announcers, but the broadcasters, the broadcasters and the commentators, they visit different highlights throughout the town, wherever it's at. So one of the big games this weekend, Penn State, Iowa, I saw that Chris Fowler visited Penn State wrestling. And, they tweeted out a picture of the Penn State wrestling room talking about, I forget the exact wording of it, but, where national titles are built, and, Chris Fowler actually spoke to the Penn State team and everything. So it's always cool to see something like that, somebody of such national prominence in college football, which is huge. It's as big as any pro sport with the following and everything that it has. It's awesome to see that gets recognized, and that's awesome not just for Penn State wrestling, but that's awesome for the sport of wrestling, for college wrestling in general.
I agree, and especially when you talked about Penn State against Iowa, the football game. When you hear Penn State, Iowa, especially as of lately, that carries a lot of significance in terms of wrestling. Those are two, Iowa historically and currently one of the best teams in the country. Penn State obviously has been built into somewhat of a dynasty here in the last few years. But Penn State and Iowa football, believe it or not, even though both teams haven't been, top 10 maybe the last 10 years every year, over the last few years they've developed quite a rivalry where the two just seem to, at least Iowa's spoiled Penn State's kind of dream seasons a few times, and then, vice versa, Penn State will go in and knock off Iowa, or, it's like those two, both Penn State, Iowa football and wrestling is a huge rivalry. So that's it's a good time for something like that to occur.
Yeah, which isn't surprising that those are two of the sports that would be huge for both of those schools. Just you think about, Iowa's out there in the heartland and in the Midwest, very blue-collar place. And, for anybody that's ever been to Happy Valley, it's very much the same type of area, the heartland of Pennsylvania, so to speak. Very much the same type of people, two blue-collar sports in football and wrestling. So it's pretty cool to see that while the football rivalry is the one going on this weekend, they're also recognizing the wrestling.
And I was going to say, Mason, what you have this written in our in our outline, and I'm not even sure what you're referring to here with this 1 pound allowance for consecutive dual meets in college. I was pretty sure when I wrestled in college that if you did have consecutive dual meets, you got the 1 pound. Is there a rule modification here that I'm not aware of?
No, so it used to be that when you wrestled back-to-back dual meets, which we did a lot of, for dual meets, you had to make scratch both days.
Really?
Yeah.
I could have sworn this just shows that you probably cut a lot more weight than I did. I could have sworn we got the 1 pound. Maybe I'm thinking of high school.
Well, yeah, there were some rough ones in there. But now for tournaments like NCAA's, if it's a competition, it's all one competition. So NCAA's goes scratch day 1 +1 +2, right? So that's always been the same. But the new rule is that you see a lot of teams do a Friday, Saturday homestand or a Saturday, Sunday homestand for dual meets. If that is the case, for the second dual meet, both teams get a pound. Which I feel like I don't know, I feel like that makes sense. And maybe that's just because we all got used to it through high school. So when it rolled around to college, it was kind of a shock to the system not having it.
Yeah, I got to go off on a tangent here real quick. One of the funniest stories of my college career, John Cerritos, for those who know him, for our Pennsylvania fans, maybe not a lot of them, but he was an All-American at Tennessee Chattanooga and coached at Old Dominion for a few years as an assistant and eventually is now the head coach at Cal Poly. But when I was a freshman, we were on a bus ride to the Southern Scuffle out at Chattanooga, and a couple guys on our team, it was January 1st, which is the date of the scuffle, and for those of you who remember in high school, January 1st is, I think, the time when you get the 2 pound weight allowance for high school. So,
well, it used to be. It's not anymore. It's like early December now.
It was back then, and so that was the time when if you were a 103 pounder, now your weight class was 105. Like, you automatically got those 2 pounds. Well, we're on a bus ride. Long story short, we're on a bus ride to the Southern Scuffle, and a couple of our guys who were all freshmen like me, we didn't know the rules for college. We all asked Coach Cerritos about, what the rule was for college, if we had to make scratch weight all year. And I just remember him telling everybody on the bus, every veteran on the team, freshman, every single one, it's January 1st, 2 pounds, dog. You get 2 pounds. So the whole team on the bus ride there was sitting there guzzling water and eating, thinking that we had this phantom 2 pound weight allowance. And one of our other assistant coaches, Nick Polano, caught wind of what he was telling us and just went off on the bus because he was unintentionally sabotaging all of our weight cuts. And little did we know that rule never existed and did not exist for that tournament. So we all set back on our weight cut there for a couple hours.
That is unreal. Yeah, I'm sure everybody was thrilled about that.
Yeah, not really, to say the least. We were pretty heartbroken, really.
Unreal. So, anyway, that's all we have for random little news and notes. 165 preview for next season. Obviously, Pennsylvania native, wrestles for a Pennsylvania school, defending national champ, Cenzo Joseph. Not much more need be said about Cenzo. He's the number one guy returning. The top 3 guys at this weight with him, Aymar, and Massa, seems like they've kind of separated themselves, at least through the course of the season. Last year they did. But it's it'll be interesting to see how Cenzo handles being the guy with the bullseye on his back instead of, chasing Aymar all season, which, no matter what anybody on the outside says or thinks, it's definitely different. The pressure's different. What goes on in your head is different. As the guy to beat, it's a different feeling. So it'll be interesting to see how Cenzo handles that. You mentioned Austin Matthews. He's got his one last run for Edinburgh. Austin's the type of kid that never really out of a match, man. He's a really scrambly guy. He's a great pinner. So, I know for me personally, as Austin's a good friend of mine, fellow Reynolds High School alum, would love to see him go out with a bang this season.
Yeah, Austin's been so close to the podium so many times, like we talked about in the Edinburgh preview. He's been, I don't know if he's been around at 12, but he's won matches at nationals every year he's been there. So it would be great. And he's always ranked like in the top 10. He's just one of those guys that just hasn't quite got there yet. But hopefully we see him crack onto that podium this season.
Yeah, and he's also been a guy that's dealt with a lot of different injury issues, from knee problems, shoulder problems, dealt with a real nasty staph infection and things like that. So it's the kid's been through a lot, and anytime that somebody goes through something like that, you always hope that in the end there's some sort of a reward on the other side of it, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So we've talked about Chance Marsteller a lot. He's going to be eligible out of the chute for Lock Haven. Tashan Campbell, a Penn Hills native, transferred from Pitt to Ohio State. He will be 165 for the Buckeyes. And then, from what I've been told, Jordan Cutler will be the guy at 165 for Lehigh, with Cole Walter down at 157. So, Cutler's a kid that was ranked 3rd or 4th in the country last year prior to the conference tournament at 157. So, Cutler's definitely a guy that will throw his hat in the ring and compete with the best of them. So I think right here, 4 of those guys are Pennsylvania natives. Cutler's a New Jersey native competing for a Pennsylvania school. So I think Pennsylvania's represented not a huge number, but the guys that are representing Pennsylvania at this weight are really high quality.
Yeah, I would say every single one of them is an All-American contender. I know the preseason rankings have just come out. I'm not sure where all 5 of those guys stand, if they're all in there, but I would have to think most of them are in the top 20, and a couple of them are definitely in the top 10. So Pennsylvania's pretty well represented at 165.
Yeah, it's not a bad group, So rolling on, classes are now underway across the country at different universities and everything, even the ones that run that funky quarter system. Like I know Connor Schramm just left last weekend to head out to Stanford because they do that. They start later and end later and just have a different setup. But I was thinking about this the other day, and the one thing I just do not miss about going back to school this time of year, I always loved going back and seeing all my friends that I hadn't seen all summer, because I spent almost my entire summer out at Lehigh, and I'm sure you were the same way at Old Dominion. You spend the majority of your summer there training and everything, but, you see your friends from other sports or maybe kids that aren't athletes that you haven't seen all summer and everything. But preseason workouts are just the worst.
Not even just the preseason workouts, just the preseason itself, just the mere existence of it, just the word kind of sends like a cold tingle down your spine.
Ugh. Yeah, I keep seeing, Snapchats and different things of guys going through preseason workouts. There is not one bit of me that misses that stuff.
No, me neither. It's one of those things that you'll never fully, I don't know if you'll ever fully recover from it. I know my body hasn't, that's for sure.
No, and I mean, for anybody that's never gone through it, so preseason, basically from the second you step foot on campus up until official practice starts, which is this year, October 10th. Actually, I think it's October 10th every year. But it's right around October 10th-ish every year. So right when you set foot on campus up until the first day of practice, it is essentially open season.
Torture.
That you just get, the entire team just gets run into the ground. And the thing that sucks about it is you understand that there's a method to the madness, and after you go through it a couple times, you understand that it works, right? You understand how much it does for you the rest of the season, how much of a base it builds. If you really do the right things and attack workouts hard in the preseason, then you still have to continue to work hard the rest of the season, but you've built up your base, you've built up your body. It serves a very legitimate purpose, right? But going through it is just awful. A lot of them are early morning workouts. You do things like, so for us, anybody that's ever been to Lehigh's campus knows this, it's on the side of a mountain. And we would always have, on either Friday or Saturday mornings, depending on the week, always had hill sprints. And those are, without any question, the worst workouts I've ever gone through in my entire wrestling career. I remember one time, we'd always do a warm-up jog for, say a half a mile or whatever it was. And we'd meet at the bottom of the hill. And it was kind of like a 3-legged setup. You'd run like a block, hang a left, run up another block and a half or so, and then you'd hang a right, and then run about a half a block. But it actually got steeper as it as you went, right? So me and one of the guys in my class, Will Sullivan, we're talking during the warm-up jog about how many, what we thought the workout was going to be, which is like mistake number one.
Don't ever speculate because you're going to be disappointed either way.
Exactly, and somehow it is always worse than what you expect. I don't know how that's possible, but every single time it's worse than what you expect, even if in your head. So this is exactly what we did. Will's like, all right, well, here's the way I look at it. It's definitely not going to be worse than like 2 all the way to the top, 8 to the middle, and then like 5 through the first, like 5 short ones. I was like, all right, yeah, that's probably true. Everybody finishes the warm-up jog. Coach Santoro goes, all right, 3 the whole way to the top, 10 to the middle, 7 short ones. We were low on every number. It's like, you have to be kidding me. That was the last time I ever tried to guess what a hill sprint, what any workout was. I completely gave up. I was so sad when Coach Pat said those numbers. I'm like, this is going to be awful. And to double down on what made hill sprints so much fun, other than the fact that if anybody's ever seen me run, I am one of the worst runners on planet Earth. First of all, I'm 5'4", so my legs aren't very long. So I'm at a mechanical disadvantage right there. My form is horrible. I take the shortest, like even for my short legs, I take really short steps. I don't know why. It's not a decision I make. I'm just really bad at running.
Mason, I'm not trying to tear you apart here, but when I watch you walk, I feel like you have you almost walk like someone who's got like arthritis in their like hips. Like you kind of like wobble a little bit. So
I know.
I'm trying to picture you running up a hill, and I'm just kind of, it's not looking too good from what I'm envisioning right now.
No, it's not at all. Trust me. And the thing of it is, like, I remember the one time the head track coach at Lehigh was sitting there with Coach Santoro while we were doing an indoor sprint workout the one time. And he literally, we get done with the workout, and he looks at me and goes, why are you making this so hard on yourself? I'm like, it's not a choice I make.
This is what you were given. You're just doing with what you have.
Yeah, and I got better about it because, like Coach Santoro and actually our head track coach gave me some tips. I got better at running, but I still to this day I'm horrible at it. But anyway, other than the fact that the workout itself, no matter who you are, is beyond miserable, I suck at running. To add even more to that, when we would do them on Saturday mornings, the rest of campus, or the majority of the rest of campus, was getting ready to go watch the football game. Right? So, anybody knows what college campus life is like on any campus in America. That you know what I'm talking about. So there are kids walking down the sidewalk as we are sprinting up the mountain, would stop and watch in amazement while everybody's having a good time. They're getting ready to go to the football game. They've all got their drinking their orange juice, and they're ready to go to the game. They're walking up, take the shuttle buses over to Goodman Stadium, and there's us just miserable beyond words. People are leaning, stepping out in the street, trying to give us high fives on the way by. I'm like, just please don't right now.
Don't make it even more of a spectacle than it already is.
Exactly. Like, I would much prefer if you acted like we didn't exist. If you could all act like you can't see us, that would be better.
Yeah, and I'll say, as bad as all the workouts were for preseason, and coaches are pretty creative about developing different types of torture. I will say that. It's not even just the workouts itself, but it's just that feeling of once it starts, it's like there's no way out of it. It's like once it starts, it's nonstop pretty much every day. I mean, you maybe get one off day a week, but for the most part, it's every day. It's like you're waking up at 6 a.m., you're doing some kind of hard conditioning, then you got practice later, then you got like a optional workout, then the next day you're doing some other crazy, you got school, you got the study halls, you got just waking up that early every day, doing like 2-3 workouts a day that are all hard, plus all the other stuff that comes with college and having to balance it all. Yeah, preseason, and then there's just no way out. It's like once it starts, it's not like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel because, it's September 3rd, and your NCAA tournament isn't until mid-March, so it's like from here on out, it's like kiss the social life goodbye.
Yeah, right. what was your guys like? I feel like every program has a specific preseason workout that like that's the one where when you know it's coming up, everybody dreads it.
I would say we had 4 workouts that were all really bad. Obviously, the football stadium, that's probably the worst. Trashmore over in Virginia Beach, which is it's literally like a big hill that's made of trash, but I mean, it just looks like driving from the highway in Virginia Beach, if you've ever been driving by, it literally just looks like a huge grass green hill we did a ton of sprints and buddy carries and wheelbarrows and stuff like that up. That was pretty bad. We had our normal beach run where we just go down to the beach and we'd run, probably 2-3 miles down on the hard sand close to the water. So that's not too bad. It's kind of just like running on concrete. But then we'd have to run the 2-3 miles back on the soft sand, which you just sink every step. You're sinking in, and it's not that the run is terribly challenging because you're just running at a normal pace, but it makes your body feel absolutely terrible when you're done because you're just sinking into the sand. It makes your back stiff. There's sand in every crevice of your body. It's pretty terrible. And when we got back, we do all kinds of hand fighting and buddy carries and stuff like that. And then honestly, probably the worst workout we ever did that at least I think, and probably most of my teammates would agree. I don't know if my coach made this up or just some kind of weird form of torture, but we would go in the gymnasium couple times of preseason, like the little small gym where like our basketball team would practice, and everybody on our team would have to get a towel, and we would do some kind of combination between sprints, like hard sprints around the gym, and then you'd have a plate too. So like there'd be one segment where you had like a 45-pound plate that you couldn't put down for 20 minutes. We do a ton of sprints with that, and then at the end we'd have like 20 or 30 minutes where it's just a towel workout where you get in basically like a bear crawl position, but your hands are on a towel.
Oh, yeah.
Up and down and back and up and down the gym, and it's basically like we're just cleaning the floor, but take my word for it, for people who can't really picture what this is like or if this would be hard, it's one of the hardest workouts. I mean, it's all legs, and the towel gets wet, and it gets stuck, and it doesn't slide right. There's no, like, the friction or whatever. It's ridiculous. Just running back and forth with the towel, that's probably the most broken I've seen a lot of my teammates doing that workout, including myself the first few times I did it. So those are probably my worst memories. And also one time I remember my true freshman year, our very first Mount Trashmore workout, it was on my birthday, which was really scrubby. I know, like, you remember as like a kid when you thought, like, you know, when you went into school on like your birthday or whatever, you always felt like you had like this free pass. At least I did. I always felt like if it was my birthday, like, no,
absolutely,
it was my special day. So like nothing could get me down. You know, if anything bad happened, it was like, oh, it's my birthday. I'll get off the hook for that. But no, that didn't happen for Mount Trashmore workout number 1 in my career. I went in there thinking like, oh, how bad could it be? Like, even if it's really hard, like, it's my birthday, they'll go easy on me. But I was sorely mistaken there. Pretty grueling workout, and then got to the end, and one of our coaches' wives actually made cupcakes for my birthday, and I just remember being so sad about my life and so depressed that I think I just gave them to my teammate. couldn't even stomach it at that point. So that's probably the worst part of my preseason that I can remember.
Preseason workouts, they break you sometimes. I mean, whether it's like for us the hills or stair sprints, and or there'd be ones where we would do like a hill sprint workout, and then you would have to do like wheelbarrows up flights of stairs.
Yep, we've done those before too. Not fun at all. Not fun for either guy. The wheelbarrow is the real tricky one, because on the buddy carry, you have to sprint. You get that explosion in when you're the guy, but then you take the pony ride, up to the steps. But when you're doing the wheelbarrow, it sucks either way, no matter which guy you are.
Oh, I know. And the worst is always if you're the guy whose hands are down. If you like misjudge a step, you're eating concrete.
Oh yeah, biting the curb.
Like, and it's not like you just trip and like you're gonna kind of hit it. You're gonna get driven into concrete. I'm sure you guys had the same thing. We had a lot of people end up. I shouldn't say it. It's not like a ton of guys. But there were a decent amount of guys over my 5 years that somebody missed a step and they ended up a little bloody.
Oh, yeah. I've seen a lot of guys fall. I've seen a lot of guys cry, and I've seen a lot of guys puke during those workouts. So,
yep.
Yeah. It's funny how the natural progression works, too, because when you're a freshman or a sophomore, you're either one of those guys or your boys are those guys, and you're sitting there like panicking. But then by the time you're like a senior, this isn't your first rodeo, and now it's the freshmen are the ones doing that. And you have to admit, even though it's not, it's kind of funny, and it's kind of in a sadistic way. It's kind of it's like, you know, you want them to go through what you went through to be here. So I mean, it is what it is, but it's good that everyone, you know, gets their taste of college D1 college wrestling preseason the way it should be.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see how young guys react to those workouts. That was what was always fascinating to me. You know, when that freshman class comes in and they go through preseasons for the first time, those first few really brutal weeks of their career, some kids shy away from it, and some kids just go dive in head first.
Yeah, and that's I remember one thing guys on our team would always be, you know, the veteran guys on the team would always get mad about would be a lot of the freshmen, and I'm sure I was probably even guilty of this a few times, would be those guys who, you know, during a hard preseason workout, they're the guys like, where are they during the middle of the workout, the beginning of the workout, and then very end of the workout, everyone's dog tired, and suddenly, oh, there's that freshman, he's winning the last sprint of the workout. And I know people have different mixed emotions about that, but I see where they're coming from, how that would be very frustrating if, you know, the guy's sandbagging it the whole workout, and then all of a sudden he's winning the sprints at the end. You know, you want to be the guy that's going hard the entire time, ideally trying to win all of them, but yeah, that was always something funny that I noticed our freshmen would do.
Oh, yeah, there are always people that do that, and it is infuriating, but what do you do, right? Welcoming onto the show now, we have an American wrestling legend, not just as a competitor, but as a coach. Brandon Slay was an Olympic gold medalist. He was a multiple-time national finalist for the University of Pennsylvania. After spending a lot of time as one of the developmental coaches within USA Wrestling, he's now back close to his alma mater in Philadelphia as the head coach of the Pennsylvania RTC, and he took time out of his busy schedule to join us here today. So, Coach Slay, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Mason. I really appreciate the time.
So, you know, we're only a few weeks removed from both the junior team and the senior level team winning world titles. The cadets finished second. And, you know, I know that this is something that if you go back to 2008, a couple Olympic cycles ago, where other than Henry Cejudo, the United States didn't necessarily have the performance that we'd wanted. And after that, there was a bit of a regime change as far as the coaching staff and the developmental system and RTCs. And, you know, I know that you were one of the few people involved in that. You know, you had a heavy hand in guys like Kyle Snyder, Mark Hall, and just the way the system was designed. Can you just kind of walk us through how you got involved in the developmental program and how, you know, that all came to be almost 10 years ago now, you know, kind of what you guys saw at the time and then how it all played out moving forward?
Sure. The history of that, as you already touched on, is after 2008, they decided to hire a new coach, and Zeke Jones actually was the head coach of the University of Pennsylvania at the time. And they decided to hire Zeke Jones as the national coach, so he took the job, and then he was looking for an assistant coach. And at that period of time, I'd been in commercial real estate in Dallas for about 5 years, but I'd really been missing wrestling. I'd really been missing Olympism, missing just the opportunity to travel around the world and coach guys to beat, you know, Russians and Iranians and Turks. And so that had been on my heart a lot to get back in the sport of wrestling. And so Zeke Jones had called me when I was in Dallas and said, "Hey, I'm the new national coach. Would you consider getting back involved in wrestling?" And I just told him that I'd been thinking about that for a while, and the timing was really good. And so I accepted that position and moved and got married, and my wife and I moved to Colorado Springs. And so I started working for USA Wrestling then. And Bill Zadek he was just getting kind of done retiring from wrestling after he'd won the world title in 2006 in China, and he'd stayed in Colorado Springs. And so he was the other, you know, man that Zeke hired. So, you know, Zeke fulfilled the staff with Bill and I. And so we were both assistant national coaches at the time. And at the beginning, from 2009 to about kind of 2000, I guess that was 13. For those 4 years, Bill Zadek started as the national development coach, and I was more focused on the senior level guys for that period of time. And then in 2013, we kind of switched when they hired Bruce Burnett. Bruce Burnett came in, and then he made me the national development coach, and then he kind of had Bill focus on the senior level guys. So Bill and I's roles kind of switched for those last 3 years before I left. So that's kind of just the history of how that coaching staff changed, and then kind of what our roles were during that, during that last 9-year period of time.
Okay. And then, I know that you guys oversaw a lot of changes within how the system was structured. I know that when I was growing up as a kid, and I always heard that my college coaches tell stories about how much things have changed as far as RTCs go. Was that kind of a group vision with you guys, and how did that really come to be? And
for sure, once we started, us three started kind of talking and communicating and saying, hey, after just winning, like you said, one medal in Beijing with Henry Cejudo, what's the strategy? What's the game plan moving forward? What type of culture do we want to build? And I think Zeke had been somebody that really kind of come out of the RTC system before they called it an RTC. So what I mean by that is that, he trained at Arizona State, and then he understood how guys trained up at Foxcatcher, and he understood how guys trained at the University of Iowa. Back then there were only a few different places, maybe some trained at Oklahoma State, but there were only a few different places where guys, senior level guys, were training. And I think Zeke, he understood the benefit of training at a college, in a college room with a bunch of college partners and some high level coaches. And so he was very adamant about wanting to start the regional training center program. And I would say from my perspective, I was kind of the devil's advocate. On the flip side, actually, Bill and I think both were. I mean, I'll speak for myself on this, but, I came from the culture of, I moved to the Olympic Training Center, and I trained at the Olympic Training Center, and I wanted the best guys around me. It wasn't necessarily being at a college. It was more about wanting to bring the guys, the best guys in the country to the OTC and train. And so that was kind of my perspective, but the more we really talked about it, I really saw Zeke's point of view. And then I realized the Olympic Training Center and USA Wrestling, they were not going to be committed to funding, 20 or 30 or more senior level guys to train at the OTC. I mean, because if you were going to pay those guys, whatever, $30,000, $40,000 a year stipends, every single one of them to come to OTC, that wasn't in the budget. So what ended up happening is the RTC program really started where guys started to go train at their colleges. Those colleges started nonprofits, 501c3s, where they could raise money from their alumni base, and their alumni would essentially fund the senior level guys to train. And then we started seeing like fruit from that, and there started being benefits because, college coaches and alumni and everybody involved started realizing, well, gosh, when you take these men and, post-grads, and you put the men around the young men, you put the 25-year-old against the 18-year-old freshman, it's the faster these 18-year-old freshmen are going to develop. And you're going to get those 18-year-olds to mature at a much faster rate, and you're going to speed up the overall development of wrestling in our country. And so as that began to happen, I think there was definitely still people that are naysayers, the people that didn't believe that was going to be best for our country. In 2009, when that was our first year as a coaching staff all together. I think we ended up maybe finishing like 7th in the world, 7th or 8th. We had 2 medals in Jake Herbert and Travell Delognev. And then going into 2010, with this vision we had, RTC vision, going into 2010, we ended up actually having 0 medals, and we finished worse than USA Wrestling. I think it finished in freestyle since 1976, right? So there was this, like, do these guys really have control of this program? Is this really the best thing for our freestyle program moving forward? And I think it's really tempting to want to just like punt, your idea and to start over and come up with something new. And as we continue to talk about it, we just figured that it was best to stick with our idea that, look, the best guys in the country, not all of them can come to the Olympic Training Center, that's not going to be like feasible. It's not going to be financially possible. So having them train at colleges and having the alumni support them so they can get paid, and then making sure we're developing those coaches at colleges and their freestyle techniques so they're continuing to learn and teach those guys appropriately. We really kind of like doubled down, I would say. And when 2011 came around, clearly that was Jordan Burroughs' first year, and that was really exciting to have him, to beat Star Goose and become a world champion. And, in 2011, we actually ended up finishing third in the world that next year. That was the year Jake Varner got third, Kale ended up getting fifth, Travell got fifth, Nick Simmons got fifth. So we ended up having, I think, 5 guys, wrestle for medals, and 2 of them achieved, medals. So to go from, geek in 2010 to chic, really, in 2011, that was, that was an exciting time, because what that said is like, hey, that was a really tough year last year in Moscow in 2010 to have no medals. That was a tough ride, tough flight back to the United States, but we really felt like this idea is the right idea. And so, 2012 rolls around, clearly we end up having 2 Olympic champions, and Coleman gets third. We have 3 medals. And I think if they don't keep team score in the Olympics in regards to getting team medals, like they do the World Championships, but I'm pretty sure we would have tied for second. I'm almost positive with Azerbaijan. So we proved to be, again, one of the best teams in the world. And I think, that continued on. I think we proved to be one of the best teams in the world. And I still think the RTC system was still taking shape. And I think the RTCs began to raise more money. And some of the RTCs they endowed their programs. And they were being able to pay like 4 or 5 or 6 guys full-time salaries to train there. And so it started getting stronger. It started becoming really the way that we were developing our freestyle guys. And clearly, there's tons of detail, but fast forward to this previous World Championships in Paris. Finally, I think we really kind of were fully loaded, going to World Championships, and I think it showed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's any question that it showed at all levels. Not just the senior level, but the junior level and even the cadet level, the guys that have really gotten to spend time in that developmental program. So obviously we've talked a lot about RTCs. You're kind of on the other end of it now. Instead of being on this, in the centralized USA Wrestling, you're now the head coach of the Penn RTC. You're working with multiple Division I programs as well as high school kids and everything. Tell us a little bit about that move, how you ended up back in Philadelphia, working with the Penn RTC, and, what things have been like so far.
Well, I would tell you, Mason, I definitely want to explain more about the Pennsylvania RTC, but I think, you and I have talked in the past. I think there's also part of you that really wanted to know about the developmental piece of USA Wrestling and
Absolutely.
Kind of what that looked like. And I think I really, the last question I answered was really kind of focused more on the senior level guys. So I wanted to make sure I answered your question appropriately as well. As the developmental side, what started taking place was with Zeke and Bill and I, is that we started saying, hey, we need to get our best developmental guys to spend time with our senior level guys as much as possible. So that means our best cadets, 15 through 17-year-olds, our best juniors, 17 through 20-year-olds. The more that we can get them to world team camps, national team camps, the better it's going to be for our developmental program. The more that you can get a freshman Mark Hall, freshman in high school, training with the Jordan Burroughs, the better. The more you can get a Kyle Snyder, right, training with the Jake Varner, the better. The more you can get a Yanni Dakamohalis training with a Frank Molinaro, or Reese Humphrey, right, the better. I could keep naming names, but that's plenty. Like, the more that you can get those cadets and juniors training with our senior level guys, again, the faster we believe those guys would develop. And I think again, we started seeing the fruit of that labor as well, because like in 2014, I remember is when it really, I believe, started clicking. I took our junior world team to Croatia. Out of the 8 weight class in the juniors, we had 6 medals. Which is pretty impressive. I mean, if you look back and study how we did in 2008, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, we didn't have close to that many. So 2014, it was like, bam, we had 6, 8 medals. We got second in the world as a team. We lost close to Iran. That ended up having 7 medals. They beat us. But then I really believe you start seeing our developmental program take shape, where we as cadets and juniors start challenging for team titles. And like this last summer, not the summer 2017, 2016, I took our cadet world team to Tbilisi, Georgia, and we ended up having 3 cadet world champions for the second year in a row, and we ended up losing by 1 point to win the cadet team title to Russia. And then clearly this last summer, outside of our seniors, we won the junior world team title, and then we were really close to winning the cadet world team title and having a sweep of cadets, juniors, and seniors, which I think, would have been, it was impressive anyway, clearly, but it would have been really impressive to win all 3 of those. So to kind of bring that full circle is that I really believe the recipe for development is the more you put the men with the young men, the more you put the cadets and juniors with the senior level guys, the faster I believe those guys are developed. And I think that's what gets into the next point for me is, talking about my passion for the Pennsylvania Regional Training Center and, my willingness to kind of leave USA Wrestling and move to Philadelphia and to come back to my alma mater and help start a regional training center here in the Philadelphia area is that, the first reason I really did that, I love my job at USA Wrestling. I love helping coach guys become the best on the planet in freestyle wrestling. But I'd say it's a rigorous schedule. Last year I worked, I was going 120 days from home.
Jeez.
When you end up taking the senior world team to the, for example, this year would have been like this. You would have taken the senior world team to Germany for the acclimation camp. You're in Germany for over a week. Then you go to Paris for almost a week for the world championships. And then you come back and you immediately run the cadet and junior camp. You take the juniors to Finland for the world championships. And then you come back and you take the cadets, right, to Athens, Greece for the world championships.
Yeah.
Like if you look back on your August and September, again, like last summer, I was gone 40 of 60 days, in those months.
That's
and, when you're married, you have 3 kids. I have a 6, 4, and a 2-year-old, 3 girls. It's really hard for me as a husband and father to continue to do that. And again, I love my job. I loved helping our guys develop, but I had to find something where I could continue to do what I love to do, but be let's just say a more present, husband and father. And so that's where you say, well, hey, all the stuff you learned, from USA Wrestling, what are your takeaways? So what would you do now with the Regional Training Center? Well, that's why coming back here and starting the Pennsylvania Regional Training Center and then combining that also with Drexel, I'd say is and I say humbly, but I believe it is totally unique. I mean, we're the only place in the country we could have 2 Division I wrestling programs, like one block away from each other. And, you can bring all of Drexel's coaching staff, Matt Azevedo, Zach Schaefer, and Josh Jeva, with their 30 guys on their team. So 3 coaches and 30 guys. And you connect them with, our coaching staff at the University of Pennsylvania of Roger Reyna, Brian Pearsall, Dan Valmont, with our 30 guys on Penn's team. And then you bring our 4 senior level guys in the mix, BJ Futrell, Chase Pammy, Dan Valmont, and Richard Perry. And you put that all together and then I'm the full-time freestyle coach. That's my main responsibility. I just really feel like it's a fantastic ecosystem of wrestling that can really help kids, in the Philadelphia area, and then within our 250-mile RTC radius. I really believe it's a great place for these young men to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned how close those 2 schools are. Can't like for Drexel Penn dual meets, can't those kids just walk to the dual meet from one room to the other?
Well, they totally do. They say it's like the it's the shortest. It's like the shortest home. Like for teams to travel to an away game, so to speak. It's like the shortest away game, right, in the country, away match in the country. Because I remember last year they were videoing it, like they were on their way to the Penn duel, and they're just walking over in their warm up. So it's extremely easy to connect with those guys. And I think what makes it feasible though is Matt Azevedo, the head coach, because he loves freestyle. As many people know, he was a freestyle national champion, U.S. Open champion. And so he's excited about helping his team develop in freestyle as well. So having him so passionate about freestyle, it really helps that connection between Penn and Drexel and having all of us work together. That's worked great. And then, a lot of people, I think they forget, like Matt Valenti was a 2-time NCAA champion for Penn, and he still gets on the mat, and he's an assistant athletic director now who's actually responsible for the success of wrestling. So, we have him. His office is about, 200 meters away, from the wrestling room.
Yep.
So it's great having Matt Valenti in the mix too. So, if you add all of Drexel's coaches and wrestlers, Penn's coaches and wrestlers, Matt Valenti and myself all in the mix, and you throw everybody in the room, I just think that, these kids in this area, they have a really good place to come get better at wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a better situation anywhere from a coach, workout partner, whatever standpoint. That's, like you said, that's very unique. You mentioned the 250-mile radius, and I know that even in my time in college, it took me a little while to completely understand the RTC setup as far as who was allowed to come to just, club practice and who was allowed to come to RTC practice. Right. Can you just touch on that a little bit and how you kind of how you work differently with, maybe the kids that just come to club practice versus the RTC kids and how that all works together?
For sure. So to go to any RTC in the country, meaning regional training center, you have to meet the RTC criteria. So in no particular order, you have to have a USA wrestling card, a current USA wrestling card. You have to be within 250 miles of the regional training center you train in. So, for example, Florida kids can't come train with us. Kids from Ohio can't come train with us. Kids from Texas and California, et cetera, can't come train with us. Mm-hmm. But the kids within 250 miles, which is a big chunk of Pennsylvania, all of New Jersey, Northern Virginia, Southern New York, Connecticut, Delaware, the kids all in that area all have the ability to come train. And again, that's the Pennsylvania RTC. But if you move it, for example, Lehigh Valley Wrestling Club, all the kids within 250 miles of Bethlehem, Allentown can come train with them. If you go to State's College, the Indiana Wrestling Club, 250 miles radius around State College. Same thing for Columbus, the Ohio RTC, etc. So you have to have a USA wrestling card. You have to current USA wrestling card. You have to be within 250 miles. And then here's the thing too: is you have to meet the proven performer criteria. And what I mean by that is that you have to have placed in the top 4 of your high school state tournament, or you have to be a Fargo All-American in cadets or juniors, freestyle or Greco. Mm-hmm. And I think really, if you would say that the easiest way to qualify for an RTC, I found typically is you have to be the top 4 in your freestyle or Greco state tournament. Yep. In freestyle or Greco and cadets or juniors. So I find, a lot of kids that kind of, I say respectfully to them, but the ones that might qualify on the lower level, they tend to be kids that, may get 3rd or 4th in the state tournament and freestyle or Greco. So, I think that's really the way to do it. If a young man said, man, I want to qualify for an RTC and maybe I'm not ready to become a Fargo All-American or be a state champion yet, how would I do it? I would always encourage them to make sure they train freestyle Greco in the summertime and go to their state tournament and place in the top 4. Because if you do that, you can train, at any RTC that's within 250 miles of you.
Okay.
And by the way, for free. Okay. So that's the big thing is once you're an RTC qualifier, by NCAA rules, USA Wrestling rules, you actually can't charge kids to come to an RTC. So once you meet that criteria, it's just a fantastic resource. Think about all the kids across the country that happen to be, live close to a college wrestling program that has an RTC. Once they qualify, they can go in and develop, at a faster rate for free. So that's how RTCs work. And as far as the clubs like you're talking about, we don't have like a club that we run that way, but I know that the club system works. Some schools have clubs that's within 50 miles. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to meet the club. You don't have to meet a certain criteria to come to a club. You just have to be within that 50-mile radius to come train. And that's where some colleges take advantage of that, because if they want to work with kids that are younger, that are just getting kind of started, that aren't necessarily some of the top kids in the state, they have like the Sooner Wrestling Club, and kids within 50 miles of Norman, younger kids that haven't met an RTC criteria, so to speak, can go train at the Oklahoma Regional Training Center.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would have to believe that normally the case for that is once those kids either get old enough or they develop to the point that they meet the RTC criteria, that's when they start to make the transition into the RTC and, can start making jumps, being around better and better guys.
Right, and that's the idea, is that it's kind of like it's like a trajectory that you follow, and you could start being, training at a local club within 50 miles. Then once you continue to develop, you reach a certain level that you can be an RTC qualifier. Then you can get in and start training with college level guys, right, and senior level guys. So it's actually good goals for young men to set. I know, for example, there's one young man that he made to the state semifinals last year in Pennsylvania, but he didn't end up placing in the top 4. He wanted to be a state champ, right? But he didn't place in the top 4, so he was like bummed because he couldn't come train in the Pennsylvania RTC. So immediately he's like, gosh, I got 6, I can't come yet. So immediately he started training freestyle Greco so he could go to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, place in the top 4 and qualify, which he did, right? And he's really been taking advantage of it, ever since. So I think it allows some young men to set some goals too, to say, hey, I'm not an RTC qualifier yet, and I want to be able to qualify and go. That's a good goal to have.
Absolutely. And I also think that you mentioned the part about the fact that if you qualify for an RTC, the whole thing is free. I think
totally free.
Yeah, from my personal view, that's such a huge part of it, because then it's purely about wrestling. There's no, from a financial standpoint, there's, not necessarily anything holding kids back from coming. They can just show up and focus purely on the wrestling, the families, as long as they can get their kids there.
That's exactly right. And I think it's the flip side. What we've been learning is that there's this demand, though, where people say, hey, I'm in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. I haven't qualified. I'm too young to qualify for the RTC, or I'm in 10th grade and I just haven't qualified for the RTC yet. What do you guys have for us for development? Like, how can you help me? And that's where, for us at the University of Pennsylvania, they started a fall clinic series. So like on Sundays at 11:15, kids can come in and train. They do have to pay for that, but at least there's an opportunity provided for those kids, 6th through 12th graders, who aren't qualified for the RTC. So I think just that when you start thinking big picture for us as coaches and how we help kids the best, because the RTCs are free and not everybody's going to qualify, you still need to be able to offer options for other people so they can develop. So we're not forgetting about them too.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to focus just on that top, 5% or whatever it may be, and
that's right,
have a huge disparity. So, I know that Roger Reyna was your head coach. He's back in his first season of his second stint as the head coach of Penn Wrestling. What's it been like so far to kind of work in conjunction with him? I know that you've mentioned before that you two have a close relationship, and that I'm sure you've learned a lot from one another. What's that been like, being able to be back, not just working together, but working together, as he's the head coach of Penn and you're in one way or another affiliated with the Penn program?
It's really been fantastic working with Coach Reyna. He recruited me to wrestle for Penn in 1992, so I've known him for 25 years.
Wow.
And during that period of time, wrestling for him and then clearly building a really close friendship with him over the years, I've told many people that he's one of the best leaders I've ever been around. And so now for me to move from Colorado, where I was clearly coaching before, but now back here and having the chance to work with him, on a daily basis, I think it's just fantastic that I get to learn from him. And in many ways, I see him as a mentor, a coaching mentor for me now. And I've just been learning so much lately, and just about how to schedule my time, about how to have process goals, in addition to objective goals. It's an objective goal. It's really easy to say, like, well, I want to be a state champ, or I want to be a national champ, or I want to be an Olympic champ. I mean, those are kind of easy to like say or just write down. The challenge is that what are your process goals? What is it going to take to get there? Like, where are you at right now? Like, what is it going to take to get there? What's the process it's going to take? And then ultimately, the big question is, the hardest part is like, hey, what are you willing to sacrifice?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's easy to say I want to be an NCAA champion or Olympic champion, but then it's like, well, where are you at right now in that process? Like, well, I'm not even ranked in the top 20 yet. And I'm like, okay, so what is it going to take to get there? Well, man, it's going to take a lot of extra work. It's going to take wrestling, freestyle in the summertime. It's going to take going to, extra camps. It's going to take extra individual workouts. It's going to take video study, right? It's going to, just all the process it's going to take to get there. But again, a lot of people can even say those things. I think the big challenge is like, what are you willing to sacrifice? And I think Coach Rayner's just been, he's just been a great leader to learn from. And I think back for his college coaching career, he coached at Penn for 19 years before he stepped down in 2005. And he coached 17 All-Americans and 3 NCAA champions. And again, humbly for me, an Olympic champion. And, he was away from coaching for 12 years, and he was the assistant athletic director at Penn the last few years. And so for him to get excited about coaching Penn again, it wasn't something that was planned. That was by no way, shape, or form a master plan before I came and took this job as, the executive director of this RTC. But that's just kind of what's happened, and it's just been exciting to work with him thus far.
Yeah, and he was still involved with the university prior to starting the second run as the head coach, wasn't he?
For sure. He was the assistant athletic director the last few years. So
okay.
He actually was responsible for branding. He was responsible for helping run the Penn relays. He was responsible for increasing like ticket sales for a lot of the sports teams. So he was used to being in Penn's athletic department and kind of running it at the highest level. And I think for him, he was successful at that. And I think a lot of people were really enjoyed working with him. But I think he like me, when I told you that story earlier, where I started missing wrestling,
mm-hmm.
where I was in the business world and I missed wrestling, and I longed to get back in the wrestling room. I think he really felt the same thing. And he's a 55-year-old, and so he's got another at least 10 years in him if he wants to coach. And he's just a different stage of life now. Like his son's a sophomore in college at Denison, Ohio, and plays soccer there. And his daughter, I believe, is going to go off and play soccer at Emory University in Atlanta.
Yep.
So here pretty soon, both of his kids are going to be outside the house. And so he's just a different stage of life where I feel like he has more margin time to really mentor young men and to recruit at a very high level. And I think his experience he's had in coaching in the past and then startups he was involved in, and then being athletic director has really helped him, I think, become fully loaded to kind of hit the ground running for the second time and do an amazing job as a head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially between him and, you mentioned Matt Valenti being in the athletics department as well. You guys kind of have all bases covered out there, don't you?
Well, I think some of your people have joked. I've heard people say things like, "Man, you guys are getting the band back together," and I think I know what they mean by that is we're just getting our usual suspects of Coach Rayner's success of being the coach at Penn in the past, and Matt Valenti was clearly a 2-time national champ for us, and then clearly I feel like I had a good career at Penn when I was there. I think getting those people back together and setting a vision for the future of Penn wrestling has been really exciting. And the reason why it's exciting is because I would imagine, like you and anybody that wrestled at a particular college, those individuals that wrestle at that college that have those colors, kind of like they bleed those colors, they're the ones that can talk about the program better than anybody else.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
I think it's always hard. It's always hard to say, like, to hire a head coach who didn't go, for example, to Lehigh, or hire a head coach that didn't necessarily go to the University of Pennsylvania and say, "Hey, I want you to talk all about this school. I want you to sell this program, the history of the program, and really tell them about your experience," right? I would just say it's probably more of a challenge for somebody who never went there. And, specifically from an Ivy League perspective, it's like, well, let me tell you what it's like to go to an Ivy League school, And if the head coach never went through that process, then, I think it's harder for them to really paint a vivid picture and to have that experience of what it would be like. But with Coach Reina, he's from Wallingford, Pennsylvania. He went to Penn. He coached at Penn. Matt Valenti, clearly went to Penn. He's been athletic director at Penn. I went to Penn. Now I'm back running the RTC. At Penn, I feel like all of us, we have a rich history, and I feel like we have a higher level to tell the story about where we've been and where we're going.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Anytime you can get someone involved in the program or close to the program that, like you said, takes pride in it, that kind of bleeds those colors, and that program means something more than just a job. That program means something in their heart. That's obviously going to be a huge advantage, whether it's from a recruiting standpoint or just from waking up every morning and doing the things that you need to do to succeed at a high level.
And when I say it ends up for those individuals, I think it's been that way for Coach Reina and Matt Valenti and myself, as it's not, a lot of times we don't see it necessarily as our job anymore. It's really our joy. And, for me, I'm not employed by the University of Pennsylvania at all, but I'm an alumni, and I'm clearly really passionate about helping the program become the best program it can be. But what's exciting for me is that I get to help Penn their wrestler develop, but I get to do that through the RTC window, meaning specifically in the summertime when all these guys are coming in and training with my senior level guys. And then you get to branch out and realize, man, there's a whole nother group of 30 guys a block away that are going to come over and we can train together. And I think it's been a lot more joyful for me to do that because it's got a lot more people involved in the process.
Yeah. And I know that, you've mentioned this, you've used this term before. You guys are kind of right in there, the Dagestan of United States wrestling.
Yeah. And I think in 2015 is one of the times I realized that in 2015 at our World Championships in Las Vegas, 5 of our 8 world team members were all within this 250 miles of Philadelphia, this particular region that we're in. And so, if you look at the guys like, Jordan Burroughs is from New Jersey. He would be able to train, at the PRTC. James Green is from New Jersey. He'd be able to train at the PRTC. Like at that team in 2015, Jake Herbert and Zach Ray, all those guys, Frank Molinaro, all those guys will be able to train within the PRTC. So and now you look at our team from last year, clearly Kyle Snyder, he'd be able to train at our PRTC. Some of the best guys, the world champions from this last year's team are within this 250 miles. So, Dagestan, as you referenced, is one of the hotbeds of wrestling over in Russia, one of the hotbeds of wrestling in the world. And I kind of see that I feel like we have that same region like a Dagestan here in the United States that sits right here in our region of 250 miles around Philadelphia.
Yeah, and until you mention that, it's funny, because you hear all the time talking about international wrestling, the way that Dagestan just churns high-level world medalists and champs and everything out. And the last time we spoke, when you mentioned that to me, that's the first time I've ever thought about it. But that's, I think you're definitely onto something with that comparison.
Well, I'm from Texas, and clearly I can't say Texas is the hotbed of wrestling in our country. We've had multiple Olympians with, Tervel and, myself and Randy Miller, and we just had that girl Asia Ray won, a medal for the cadets this summer. We're starting to, win some medals for Texas, but in no way, shape, or form, Texas is the hotbed of wrestling in our country, and you don't have to really look too far to look at rankings to realize, like New Jersey and Pennsylvania and like Maryland. I think the Wrestling Nomad tweeted out something that Maryland this year won more gold medals actually than Dagestan did. If you look at like all the different levels, women, and men, that Maryland had more gold medals than Dagestan did. So if you look at this particular region, it's not a stretch to say it's one of the hotbeds in our country.
No, not at all. One of the hotbeds in our country and the world.
Yeah.
But Hey, Coach, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so at this point, is there anything else you have for us about the Penn RTC? Just anything that, you'd like to get out there for people to hear.
I would just close by saying it's been really exciting for us, the Pennsylvania RTC, to do. We have about 100 videos that we've made, and they're all about 2 minutes each. We try to make them kind of short and sweet. We have about 100 videos that we have put on our website, PennsylvaniaRTC.org. And if you click on the media section, that you can watch all those videos, and then it populates. So if you go to top end SING, like for single leg, like every single thing where single leg is taught will pop up. And, we've had Jordan Burroughs has a video on there. Kyle Snyder has a video on there. Frank Molinaro has a video on there. Penn staff, Drexel staff, all my 4 senior level guys and myself. We've taken time to kind of build out that kind of that technique media section. And we've done that because people are like, well, why do you give that stuff away? Why don't you charge for it? And so the heart is not to charge for it and make money from it. We want to kind of be just be a resource and serve wrestling, not only in our area, but really the country and the world, if people want to take time to watch that. So I feel like there's been tons of people pouring into me in my life, and I didn't creatively come up with all this stuff. I've been thankful to have great coaches in the past. And so we want to take that technique and make sure that, kids and coaches and parents, anybody who want to learn from it can take the time to learn from it. So feel free to check that out.
Yeah. And I think I speak on behalf of, myself as well as anybody who, whether they're a coach, an athlete, or just a wrestling junkie, thank you guys for putting out videos like that. That type of stuff is what helps our sport grow.
Well, it's an honor.
So, well, all right, Coach. If you don't have anything else for us, just like to thank you again for taking the time and talking to us.
Thanks for having me on the show, Mason. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, absolutely. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, and, Coach Slay's interview actually rolls right into our team to preview for this episode, one of the 2 teams that is involved in the Pennsylvania RTC, Drexel. So Drexel's a program with Coach Azevedo that, they're on the up and up right now. They've gotten a lot of high-quality recruits. They're definitely trying to, and they definitely are changing things. They're in the process of creating the type of culture that they want and need to have. So notable guys that come back for them: Joey Goodhart is ranked number 16 at heavyweight by Flow Wrestling. He's an NCAA qualifier. Zach Fuentes returns at 125. He's an NCAA qualifier. Austin DeSanto, the man, myth, legend that shocked the world by beating Spencer Lee in his last high school match. He's now out there. So and I don't have any earthly idea whether they're going to send him as a true freshman, whether he's going to redshirt. But Austin would be a guy right around the 125, 133 area. He's listed on the roster as a 133, so, we might see him as a true freshman. I don't know. Stephen Loiseau, who was a Pennsylvania State High School champion, he's coming off a redshirt. He's up at 197 now. We could see him back in the lineup. Garrett Hammond, who, until looking through their roster and really digging down into all things Drexel wrestling for this preview, I didn't realize Garrett Hammond was still around.
Yeah, Garrett Hammond, my brother's high school nemesis. They wrestled in the state finals twice. Hammond won both. But transferred from Penn State after having a pretty decent, I think it was freshman season, starting for Penn State at 165, and then transferred to Drexel. I think he was wrestling 65 still, and he got hurt. Or maybe he might have gotten hurt 2 years in a row. I think he had a pretty serious injury. It might have been an ACL or something, or a shoulder or something. He was out for, I think, a whole year. So I think he's coming back now as a fifth-year senior. He might end up having 2 years of eligibility because, like you listed on this outline, he might have gotten a medical redshirt. I'm not sure, but looks like he's made the drop to 157, which is probably his more natural weight class. I know he was a 52-pounder in high school, and 65 seemed like he was a little small. But yeah, obviously a ton of talent, one of the top guys in the country coming out of high school, and a 3-time PA state finalist and 2-time champ. So we'll see what he's able to do for the Dragons at 157.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll do a lot of good things. And then Alex DeShanis, a North Allegheny product, in the lineup at 184. He was an All-American at University Nationals. He took 7th or 8th, I think, at universities this past spring in freestyle. He's been an NCAA qualifier, so a pretty solid group of guys coming back for Matt Azevedo and Drexel. They got a lot of things going on, as Coach Slay talked about, in conjunction with Penn and the Pennsylvania RTC. So Drexel's a program that I'm sure in years, the next few years, really going to be one to look for, with the recruits they've gotten in the past few months. I think Josh Stillings was the most recent one, but they've gotten some really high-quality guys. They've got some high-quality guys on the roster right now, without question. And I'm sure that the coaching staff and those kids out there are excited about the direction in which that program is headed. But that said, I think that's going to do it for us today. Want to thank Coach Brandon Slay for coming on and talking to us. It was a bit of an adventure getting that interview done and everything. We actually had to record it twice, so a huge thank you to Coach Slay for being willing to record it a second time due to some, I don't know if it was my error or if it was a program error, but either way, another huge thank you to Brandon Slay for being willing to do that. Hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, if there are any topics that you want us to touch on, feel free to hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, whatever medium you want. And hey, thank you guys for tuning in.
As Mason said, that's going to wrap it up for us here at the PA Power College Podcast. Thanks for dialing in. As always, I'm Tristan Warner. Find me on Twitter at WarnTriz, and find Mason Beckman on Twitter at Beck_Diggity. Fans, please visit PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at PAPowerWrestle and give us a friend on Facebook. Till next time, stay classy, wrestling fans.